calling to order the August 19th, 2019 Convention and Visitor Bureau Advisory Board.
So official.
So is anybody not present this evening?
Jeremy.
Jeremy Maker.
Yeah, he's not going to make it tonight.
Jim Case.
Yeah, our ex officios are. I was going to make a Latin joke, but I can't think of what Latin would be. Not here.
Well, it's not an official agenda item, but I would like to welcome our two new CVB members, Mr. Sean Davis, Mr. Mike Sykes. Welcome to the team. Appreciate you guys filling those vacancies for us. Agenda item 2, public comments. There's no one here, so moving on. Agenda item 3, consider approval of previous minutes from June 17th, 2019. Has everybody had a chance to read over, and do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda item 4. Discussion and possible action on event support application for VCW Wrestling.
Some background on this one. Tommy had turned in an application for event support funding earlier in the year, and that original application was for 2 events.
Right.
But then one of the events ended up falling outside of the fiscal year. So basically it was voted on and changed for half the amount for one event. And then the second event ended up falling within the fiscal year of September. And so he reapplied for funding for that second event.
Okay.
Yes. A tricky part of this will be Tommy can be in here to answer any questions about the application. When it comes to like voting on it, he has to split and get out of here. Another complicating factor is that the city manager mentioned that if the board does recommend approval for the funding, he still wants to have the city attorney look it over to make sure that there's no conflict of interest in terms of a CVB board member,
Okay.
that kind of thing. So
Now, wasn't Red Brick Nights funded for a very long time under the same conditions?
that's a good question, and I don't understand all those things. I'm just saying what the city manager asked me to do.
All right.
So he wants to have the city attorney look at it first before it's completely approved. So if the board approves it, he'll have the city attorney,
Right.
the new city attorney,
I don't see
bless it
there'd be a
as it.
conflict of interest.
So
Okay.
All right.
I'm just.
So everybody, I
passing
guess,
it along.
just take a couple minutes to refresh, and if you have any questions. So it's not even kind of asking about what it is.
Yeah. So the fairground has suffered extensive damage, and we're working our butts off to get it back together for to be suitable for the fair. There's a slim possibility we have to move this show to October 5th, which is technically in the next fiscal year, but all the advertising is done in this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So it falls in a really weird spot right there. How do we deal with that?
Let's just, if the board wants to vote on it, the board can just vote on it, yes or no, and then I'll take it to the city manager and he can decide.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just pretend that it works for tonight. And then
Works for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that place was a mess.
Is it from the floods?
Yeah, we got 5-6 feet of water in there, so everything 8 feet and lower had to be ripped out. All the dirt had to be redone and sanitized. The bleachers had to be stripped and repainted. The roof, they actually took it a step further, added a new bathroom, redid the entire kitchen. and shot 2 or 3 inches of foam on the ceiling inside. And right now you can walk in there and it's 15 degrees cooler than it is outside. So that's gonna open it up for a lot more events down there.
That's awesome.
And it's real pretty because everything's clean and white right now. So the first FFA thing, which kind of aggravates me because we as BCW have it put on us to put it back together when we're not the only ones in town using it. You know,
Sure.
FFA, 4-H, but we'll do it, whatever we gotta do.
So they haven't given you like a firm date on when everything's gonna be?
They gave me yesterday, Friday, they said we can start Monday or Tuesday moving the stuff, because they took everything out of there to the other building. We've got to move everything back, and you don't realize how much stuff's in there. Now, the toilets may not be ready for the fair, and by the state of Oklahoma, we have to have toilets with as many people as we draw. So that would be our only holdup, would be the bathrooms.
You go this to Jeff behind you.
If the event does have to be postponed to October, you mentioned that you've already paid for the advertising and whatnot for.
Yes,
Is that gonna inhibit, you have to have those redone with the new date, or how's that?
no, because we haven't printed anything at this point.
Okay.
We're waiting till Wednesday or Thursday to see.
Okay,
And they should have a pretty good idea by then. But right now, it looks like we might have to move it.
yeah.
FEMA also has to come in and say, okay, everything's great, you can do what you want now. Health department already has, but FEMA's got to do it now, so it's been a nightmare.
Yeah,
But
if FEMA's involved, that's not a fast.
no, it's
process.
not, so we're just looking at a week's difference, so we're looking at it. So.
Cool.
Does anybody else have any questions?
What's your budget on the marketing?
A budget on marketing, we would like to keep it at 500 to 700, but it never works that way. It usually goes higher. We've had it up to 2,000, but we found out radio is pointless. $1,500 later. We asked at the show how many people heard it on the radio, and one little kid went, no kidding. So,
All right.
Any other questions for Tommy? Yeah.
but I just get on a hall card.
Can you attend? It's a long-term decision. No.
Okay, should we shut the door?
Oh, sure.
Stop that one, please.
Okay. All right, any discussion regarding, before we vote? Anybody have any thoughts, feelings, concerns? That stinks about the damage. I hope that they can get it
Yeah.
going.
There are an awful lot of things, even aside from his event, that are kind of depending on those buildings, so.
Yeah.
Did
Well,
you
I would
approve
say, I mean,
1,000?
in regards to, and
Previously, we approved 500. Because there was, the original request earlier in the year was for 1,000.
That's, yeah,
That was just
what
for
I meant.
one,
And
we
they did
changed to one
500,
event, we cut it in
Yeah,
half.
split them right now.
Okay.
And as far as, we're an advisory board, ultimately, we can vote all we want, but the city gets to determine the ultimate plan of action regarding any grant and event support requests.
The city manager.
City manager,
Yes.
excuse me. My personal feeling, I feel like because the advertising is being done in this fiscal year,
Mhm.
I don't have a problem with if the event has to be pushed back because of emergent situation into the new
Sure.
fiscal year, especially since it's a week difference. I think that we can show, just, the fact that it $500 doesn't even cover all of the promotion, so
That makes sense.
that's just my personal. Anybody have any feedback or pushback about that? or anything else before we vote? Everyone's being real quiet. I need y'all to like talk. I know I'm not Mike. I know it's weird. Like I know. But all right. So ready to vote? Do we have a? Or would anyone like to make a motion to approve or disapprove?
We'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I'm calling back in.
You're on fire tonight.
All right, agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on changes to event support application process, which I will punt this over to Justin
Okay,
to explain.
thank you. So, especially for Sean and Mike, one of the main things that the board has always done throughout the year is as different event support applications come in, they're presented to the board, board talks about them, recommends to approve or disapprove those applications. And what I've been trying to think of it is a way to make it easier on this board to make those recommendations in I think more a more fair way, as well as just to kind of with the budget year as well, make it all make sense more. And so I was wondering if instead of doing it like we've always done it, which is whenever an application comes in, we present it to the board. So whether it's October or June, it gets turned in and you guys talk about it. Possibly approve it, possibly disapprove it. But in my mind, it makes a little bit more sense for us to be able to bring all of the applications to you guys in one meeting. So like the beginning of the year, when you know how much the budget is for the year for event support, here are however many applications there are from different organizations, and you can you can make recommendations based on all of those applications in front of you at one time. Because theoretically we could, if there were 3 event support applications in October, theoretically we could fund those and be out of money for the rest of the year. And then somebody could apply for funding in June and it would already be done. But if we had everyone apply at the same time, then if one group was applying for, this amount and another was applying for this amount, technically we could allocate those a little bit differently to try to fund something to each one, or however it wanted to work, but you'd have everything in front of you to make a decision.
Right.
So what you're saying is setting up a yearly deadline
Yes.
for anybody who wants to put on an event to request funding from the city, that there is one date that everybody for the whole year has to apply by that time.
Yes, and if you think of it in terms of a grant cycle, most grant cycles operate that way. And so I think most organizations would see that as something that they have to deal with anyway. If it's an organization that works with other grant funding, they're already doing that with a certain deadline. So I don't think that would be something that would, come out of left field for people. And if you guys wanted to do it that way, I think, we could make phone calls tomorrow and say, for October's CDB meeting, we'd like to have all of the event support applications in for the next budget year. That gives, whoever wants to apply, it gives them 2 months to fill out, 3 pages of paper. I don't think that's too laborious, I don't think, on organizations. Does anybody think that is a bad idea?
Do you have like any emergency procedure if somebody comes in and didn't realize this board existed and they're going to do an event and it's after October and, maybe that doesn't matter, but.
We could.
maybe with
I would
newer,
almost ask, if anyone comes into town and wants to do an event, woohoo, they don't know that we exist, they probably don't need our money,
yeah, that's,
right? I mean,
Yeah, part of me likes the idea of like, not allocating all of that budget category just in case someone comes to us next year, but then we've also already told these other organizations to hurry up and get it in.
Well, maybe having some money set aside for like an emergency situation where they're like, oh no, we're having to fix our venue, so now we need extra money.
Yeah.
Like maybe have some set aside for that kind of situation.
well, and I'm writing down a couple of questions, and one of them kind of goes along with that. So, one of my questions was, what if we have a budget surplus? So meaning we have a certain number of people turn in grant support applications, we give them 100% of what they're asking for, and we still have budget left over. What happens to that? Do we just roll it over to the next fiscal year, or do we create an emergency fund? That leads to questions regarding like, well, why did they get special dispensation for like, I didn't know you existed, so can I have money, when these other people had to go through this other, so two
Maybe.
questions there really, like surplus usage. How realistic is it that we would even have one though? I know our budget is short this fiscal year. Are we expecting that to continue as a trend, or?
In terms of next year's budget, it is quite a bit less than this past year. So, like in the special event category, we're going from, last year was $30,000, and this coming year is going to be 20. So it's a steep dive, and so my guess is it's going to be much more competitive than it has been, at least than it was last year.
What about when we talked a few meetings ago about having an advertising category? Because really, that's what BCW is more than sponsorship. It's because we sold you the banner and we hang the banner up at the show and put you in the programs and put you on the poster. So you're basically paying the same price my advertisers do for their sponsorships. So.
Yeah, like.
And I mean, there's others that are not just me that falls to also.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to looking at things like trying to separate things out into here is event support, here is advertising opportunities.
Right.
Is that 20,000, like that's all of it regardless of what categories currently exist?
Basically, the two main categories are your event support, which is that's down, going to be down $10,000 next year, and the other main category is marketing and supplies, and that's down $11,500 next year.
Do you know what that budget will be next year for the marketing and supplies?
I do, yes.
Can you share that with
I
us?
can, yeah. So the special events category next year will be 20. The marketing and supplies will be 35.
Okay.
And so, if we did move like certain things over into just a marketing or advertising like contract or opportunity, I'm not opposed to that. It just means that doing so, we'd have to not do something else in terms of advertising and marketing. So it's
So
a
does
matter-
like Lazy E come out of marketing?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my other question that kind of falls under what you just mentioned, Justin, when people currently fill out an application for us, we ask them to tell us what they would be using this grant funding for. I feel like if we move forward with having as one date deadline for the entire year, that we might run into a situation where people don't know what their expenses are going to be necessarily. A lot of our events do plan, for example, Christmas, we plan an entire year, like there's not a month of we're not having a meeting and planning. Even in that, we don't always know what we're gonna need to spend what amount of money on until
Sure.
we get closer to that event. So I can just that to say, so if someone, asked for $2,000 and said it would all be for advertising, but then they get a discount on advertising somehow and it's only costing them $1,000, how are we gonna handle that in regards to, well, you said it was gonna all be used for this? I think that we should talk about changing our method a little bit if we're going to do this once a year, have your stuff turned in and have
Sure.
maybe a little more wiggle room and not as high of an expectation on you tell us exactly where the dollars are going now, but the follow-up later, the post-event reports, getting a lot more heavy-handed with those, like seeing exactly where it went after it was spent.
That makes sense.
Thanks. Okay. No one wants to talk tonight, all
Well,
right.
that's true though, because you would wanna know for the next time they apply, well, they didn't even use the money for what they said,
Right.
so you would know to cut it back the next time.
Right, well, but especially with our legacy events, I trust these boards who have been doing these events for well over 20 years each. They know what they're doing, trust them to do it to the best of their ability and spend the dollars where they feel it's wise to spend them. So I think it just creates a bottleneck and even a frustrating situation for everyone when we're like, well, you said you were gonna spend $10 on this, you have to spend all $10 on this. Meanwhile, they're like, but it's only costing me $4 and I can put my other $6 over here now. I think we need to.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be something like punitive, like where if they change, the scope of what they, how they're going to put their event on. Maybe we could just, change that process where you just make sure you're communicating along the way with city staff. If you do change from, a certain amount of funding going towards advertising, a certain going to, just make sure you're keeping,
Excellent records are really important.
yeah.
How do you feel like we've done or are currently doing with the post-event report stuff? Do you feel like that's something we really follow up on with well, or do we put more trust in their initial application versus the follow-up after the event?
I don't know if, I think we could probably do more from the staff side of following up more, but I also think it's a little bit ambiguous what we want from them anyway. So we could, if one organization is giving us like a 10-page report on something, and another organization gives us, a paragraph of information, according to what we're asking from them, neither one of them is technically right or wrong, because we're not being super specific about what we really want from them. So. I don't know if that was an answer to the question.
My suggestion is just that we be a little more open-ended, I guess, with the initial request process. Give a little bit of faith, especially to our legacy events, and then maybe tighten up the ship a little bit as far as post-event and ask for not just a paragraph, but show us some receipts, show us, where the grant money was spent in regards to this event, and
Yeah. Well, and plus, I think a lot of the events that have been here for ages and ages, they're gonna be better anyway. Probably, hopefully, at having, a budget estimate for the coming year and other things too. So, but yeah, I think like holding them to things on October 1st that are 9 months away in terms of like estimates.
It'd be hard.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair to, yeah, whatever that phrase is, just, yes, I understand what you're saying.
does anybody have any, no, go ahead.
If it's like 9 months away, did they not just ask for it as basically, we need this because it's going to cost this, but as overall event support?
And that's kind of what I'm saying, like just allow them to ask for event support, because everything within their event falls under that umbrella heading, right? And then afterwards, unpack what event support meant. What did you use that grant funding for specifically? And then we would even get even more detailed information than what we get, regardless of how soon before their event they're applying, it's still typically pretty as vague as they can get away with, because you don't know until you're actually having to spend those dollars, what exactly every dollar is gonna go to when you're doing these massive festivals. Does anybody have any concerns, questions, or pushback overall with the city of Justin's proposal to change it from our current method where they can turn it in any time of year? But it is right now it is a certain requirement, a certain amount of days before the next CVB meeting. What's the current?
I think it's supposed to be in like by the first week before if you wanted to have it like on tonight, it needed to be in the first week of August. Something like that.
So changing from this current process to, say, our fiscal year starts October 1st, like they all have to be in by October 1st. Does anybody just completely hate that idea?
Does that feel like enough time for if we contacted everyone who has applied in the past tomorrow?
Is there enough time for you to do that?
Really?
But where does this leave the first week of October, which is bluegrass? Are they applying for the next?
Yeah, yes, so bluegrass would be applying for the following year, the following bluegrass.
Because they would have already had to have their grant,
Yeah.
which they do right now, correct? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, just, sorry, I've been kind of listening to everybody, and when it comes to such a drastic change, and I get that I'm new here, so give me a little rope, but we're looking at an overall 30% reduction in operating budget, right? Now, when you say operation, there's two different budgets. There's your whole budget and your actual operations budget, and we're already talking about having dedicated money for other legacy events. It's basically a given. It's going to be given, right?
We don't have applications from these folks yet to say.
But we're expected to get them, yes. I mean, we can count on them getting us an application, and there's things that come in year after year.
Yes, but the amount that they ask for is not the same every single year.
But what I'm talking about, let's just use simple numbers, right? So let's just say, you said the Bluegrass Festival, that's the one that's coming up, right? And they typically, within a 10% either way, ask for $5,000, whatever, right? So now we've already, it's basically, the CVB is already on the hook, expected to pass a $5,000 grant, right? A year in advance. See what I'm saying? Is this kind of ringing with everybody? So at the beginning of the year, we don't actually have this $20,000. We actually only have 15. You see what I'm saying? Is that kind of making sense to everybody?
Keep going.
I'm just getting kind of the gist of it, but
What I'm saying is let's just go with this $20,000, right? So there are events that this board is already expecting to get requests for an expected amount of money. If we go back and we look at what's been requested over the past 3 years,
Sure.
okay, we can dig up those records, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we can see who has been consistently requesting grants from the CVB, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we know that, let's say, we expect before anything starts, $5,000, and I'm just throwing this out there to keep money easy, right? Keep numbers easy. Before anything starts, we're already $5,000, it's already gone, right? See what I'm saying? So now you're talking about, when you're talking about the budgeting process, right? And trying to predict what you're going to approve a year in advance. Does nobody see that conflict or the difficulty that we're putting on ourselves to already have money taken out of the budget?
Well, that's a good question. So
Right,
if
so that's what I'm
we
saying.
have
So
that money as a budget.
if we're doing it all in advance, which is what we're saying, we're front loading the work. Does that make sense? That's what we're talking about, doing front loading the work.
Dividing the pie.
We're dividing the pie, but what I'm saying is the pie is already divided to a certain extent before the
So
work
we're
even starts.
But I
It's
think,
already expected to be taken out.
but I think what Justin's saying is it's all in front of us at one time. We don't have that pie already out, and now we're trying to make it we're like, oh man,
So we can
we've already
reduce how
approved that.
big their site is.
You're looking at everything at one
Think
time.
about
making
If
those
you have,
decisions.
we're looking at everything at one time,
Right.
right? But those numbers, we can't start looking at those numbers with the 20,000. You see what I'm saying?
But why can't you? If you have, say, at October's meeting, if we have, 12 different requests for funding, and you have $20,000 budgeted to fund special events for the year, and the request of those, whatever it is said, 12, whatever, say that if you add all those up, and it adds up to 40, then I think it's reasonable to say, okay, how, as a board, what do we recommend?
I understand that, but here's what I'm saying, is that from everything I'm hearing and everything that I've read, there are other events that are foregone conclusions.
But not the amount.
But even then, right? The fact that it's a foregone conclusion, that it will get approved, affects everything. It's like signing a car lease. You basically have already committed yourself on the hook for whatever you're gonna pay a year from now.
I hear your concerns, but I think that with this proposed change, yes, you would have all these legacy events applying at the exact same time as potentially like Born and Branded. If they come again next year and apply again, they're brand new, this is the first year. They're on the table together.
Sure.
So we can say, okay, again, Christmas, 5,000, well, we can't with this budget give you that and still be able to help this over here. We're gonna have to give.
Exactly, and there's the conflict I'm talking about, because then some people might sit there and go, well, the Christmas has got it for the last 10 years. Why can't we give it all to a new thing?
And there's a lot of numbers and history to back up why we would advise to give it to who we, yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that's not going to be for every event,
What's not going to be for every event.
that there's numbers to back them up.
Well, like
Right, and so that's
Right.
where ultimately we just look at whatever information we have and we make, and we
Right.
advise what we think, and that's.
Sure.
You make a good point though, because had we made them, like they waited till now, we could have run out of money.
And then
Born
get
and Branded,
nothing.
and they'd get nothing. Where if it's at the beginning, then we see that they want that money. So we make sure that they get it, rather than them losing out completely.
Can I ask a semi-unrelated question? So like, we're saying like pulling back, like defining exactly what people are spending it on and like making an event support, but there's two parts of the budget, so like where's this part come in? If we define everything as event support?
The marketing and,
Yeah, where's that come from? Like, or how does that apply?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think I know what she's talking about, because I was thinking about the same thing, just from a purely accounting standpoint. If you run everything through as event support, and let's say the budgets between the two of them are $50,000, whatever it is.
Sure.
You have $40,000 in event support and $10,000 in marketing support. How does the city manager look at that and say, well, from an accounting standpoint, he's gonna say, well, that's okay, we can adjust that, just end up with 30 or 25 and 25, or are they gonna say, well, you guys have requested a surplus in this line item, and I gotta cut some of that back. I don't know how he looks at it, I don't.
Are you saying that if we ended up with, say out of the marketing line item with like money that was a surplus in that category, could it be moved to a different
Well,
category? Is that
yeah,
what you're
like
saying?
Caitlin's
Sound like
point
it's being like
was,
assigned anywhere, yeah.
we don't know what people wanna do, so let's just put it all under event support.
Yeah.
But, just from like an accountant might look at that and say, well, you've over budgeted in this area, it doesn't matter that you've under budgeted in this area, you gotta cut it here. I don't know how they look at it, I mean, that's up to the city to, I don't know what they've historically done.
So like, for example, like things like in the marketing category would be things like last year, some like television spots and newspaper ads, so those kind of things. And so those are things that like typically fit into that marketing category.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily fit in with, being a sponsor for 89ers.
Oh, okay, so they're like completely separate. All we have to work with is the event support, basically, like for approving things.
We do typically, will come to this board and say, like when we, look at our advertising contract with Lazy E, like whenever I have that discussion with them, I'll probably bring that to you guys to look at to see like what your thoughts are on, do you have, recommendations or thoughts on like how that's structured, different things that we could ask for, or things that, don't really benefit us in that advertising contract with them. So.
Okay, but like, so for the 12 events that come in, the marketing side really doesn't have anything to do with approving, they want $500 here, $5,000 here. That's all event support.
Correct.
Oh.
Yes.
So none of that money can go.
That was on.
It's
I was like,
I missed it.
It's been really hot today, so I'm not hearing your questions right, and lots of going back and forth in the heat.
Well, so to be clear, the $35,000 does not go to people who come in here and apply for event support, even if they're specifically applying, say they apply for $4,000 to pay for a commercial. It still comes out of event support, not out of marketing.
Yes, correct. If
Okay.
someone is
Does that clear everything?
Yes.
So we are talking about 20,000, the 35 does not pertain to the
Right.
decisions we make here.
20,000.
That's
Okay.
And my ability to answer questions is just super screwy today.
Well, that's a good, because I was wondering that as well, like how, okay.
I don't know, I kind of like the idea instead of something that's wholesale and an unknown, lots of unknown questions, lots of unknown procedures, lots of unknown everything, maybe just go out semi-annually before you make all the decisions and maybe mitigate the first time around, just to mitigate any trip-ups, give ourselves a backup window. So if anything goes wrong, we can fix it 6 months from now or whatever.
Okay,
Right.
so maybe the first year, instead
The
of
first
being a
year.
once-a-year thing, this first year we say we'll have 2 deadlines this year, and then 2021 we'll have 1 deadline.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Just to work out the kinks before we go whole hog into something that hasn't been done before.
It still runs the risk of, if someone waits to that second deadline, there might not be money left.
I agree.
So that is something to think about as
What
well.
if you divided it, like 10
And
and
then
10?
you divide the budget. Yeah, exactly. It's real simple. Like you just,
But then you run the risk of, okay, we divide the budget, then we have 2 events that apply in the second half, and the first 6 events that applied didn't get the money that they needed.
Right.
So I like the idea of once a year. I think if we do, and just because, so say the deadline, you don't have to make the deadline October 1st. You could make it January 1st, right? Like we could have this meeting in January to go over all of them in January and give us a little extra wiggle room to reach out to everyone.
Isn't that what we did this year? I thought we did all of them, like, there was a whole room of people.
Well, there was just one particular
At some
meeting
point.
that
We had
Oh, yeah,
a,
they were sitting down.
but that was kind of just by chance. That's when they turned in
I
their
thought that was
applications.
like what we did last year, or this last.
And I like that a little more too, because as Verla brought up Bluegrass, their event is happening that first week of October. And I would hate to stress them out with like, oh, by the way, now you have to do this process in the middle of the event that you just got approval of your funding for, which is a huge, massive event, hot, tons of people. I'd hate for them to be stressed or rushed, or at worst, not get it in and not get funding for 2020. So that's why I also bring up the idea of it not necessarily having, if we just do this once a year plan, it doesn't necessarily have to be done in October when our fiscal year begins. We're just gonna say, this is this one date for this whole year, correct?
You could push it back to maybe November.
Sure. Keep in mind that the whole reason I bring it up is to make it easier on you guys.
I know that our fiscal year begins in October, but my brain's fiscal year begins in January. Like January to me is like, as president of Christmas, like January is when I can breathe again. So I like the idea of giving you guys, the staff, who have to reach out to all of these people, more time to communicate this change and also give people who do these events more time.
But what if they need their money before?
Well, their events don't happen till 2020, right? No,
Christmas hasn't applied yet for this,
But yours would fall in 2019.
yeah. See, that's hard too, because October, we have to always wait till October to apply for funding that's happening like the next month. So for Christmas, it's always stressful anyway, because there's decisions that we can't make till we know how much money we're getting. That's a side, like that's not, you know.
we can always keep it exactly the way it is.
And it's, according to this box up here, quarterly.
Yeah,
It says November, February, May, and August.
Say quarterly, yeah, just.
yeah,
And
that's,
that was to spread it out. I remember when that came
yeah,
about.
it never quite worked out that way.
When we
Lots of
were
ways to
on the
skin a cat, do it biannually, but apportion 70% of the budgeted funds to be for the first thing, and then the only 30% for the latecomers, for the second time around. You know, that you don't, it doesn't, 50/50 doesn't mean anything. I mean,
Well, I get
semi-annually
what she's
doesn't mean anything,
saying.
but yeah, I get
If
what you're
you-
saying too.
If you save half of it and then
That's what I'm
nobody
saying.
applies,
Don't
you
save
still
half
have all
of
that
it.
money left over.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, you're not saving half of it, you're apportioning 70% of the budget. for the
You gotta
first
make
round.
that very clear if you're gonna do that.
That's what I'm saying, I mean,
But I
there's
do-
always one way, I just don't like,
I do it the way it is, or once a year. I think it's just,
You do think once a year?
either don't change anything or do, I think trying to
Oh, I got you.
figure out contingency funds and all that is gonna be a nightmare.
And we haven't run into, at least as I can remember, we haven't run into a situation in the past where, like, an organization comes to us in, you know, the end of August to apply, and there's no money. It's-
Well, he's
it
doing
kinda
it
just-
late.
It kind of just works.
Is there
it's worked
plenty of
out.
money to cover his event?
What's that?
He's doing it late, so is there plenty of money to cover his event?
There's not, there's like exactly enough left.
Love you, Justin.
And so that's, I don't want to get into the mentality that it's like people who apply in August are applying late. Like they're applying before their event
Well, I meant
happens.
late in the year.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So, but it's still, it's this perception, right, that it's like, if you don't apply right when the fiscal year CBV begins, if you don't get money, well, you should have applied sooner. Well, you know, in the current way that we do it, why would we potentially penalize someone who has to apply in August because his event is in September? We allow them to do that. So that's another reason for me why I think this once a year method is more fair.
And we, just on mine, we did that because of the way the two events fell.
Well, I just wondered, like, you're
If I would
applying late
push-
in the fiscal year and there is money still.
Oh, we pushed
So we might
back
not
that
necessarily run out.
2 weeks. That would
But
be
next
the
year, we're
first
gonna
thing.
be 30% less budget to work with,
Yeah.
so.
That's why I like the.
I know, and almost for that reason makes me wanna see all of them together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't it provide people opportunity to seek other sponsors when they find out?
They get an early
get from
answer,
us?
that's a good point too, Berlin, that's a great point.
They go out and knock on some doors.
Yeah.
I do have a question, like, we split mine up this time. And I know the answer, I just wanna make sure. Like Red Brick Nights, us, whatever, if we have more than one event, normally those would go on one application for the whole year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this was just crazy the way everything fell, that's okay.
So are you wanting us to give you a vote on this tonight, or is more I mean, it's August, granted, so if we're gonna make this.
Yeah.
I think the only reason why it might be good for you guys to decide tonight, it would give organizations, you know,
Time to get ready.
yeah, time between now and whenever you wanted that, you know, deadline to be.
Right. Well, so, you know, and Christmas always does it right at the beginning of October anyway, because we're chomping at the bit to get that answer. So it's like as soon as your fiscal year starts, we get it turned in. So for us, it's not really an issue. But again, for Bluegrass, like, how can we help you get this paperwork done, because we are
Yeah.
changing this method and,
And I think we could be on the staff side, we could offer a little more technical assistance help than typically we do to help them fill that out on time, just since we're actually giving them a lot of, more of a deadline than usual,
Do we have an online application or it's all paper applications, right?
just paper.
Can we change that?
Make it easier on some of those people.
I know a lady who programs computers.
Maybe. I don't have a lot of experience at creating online forms.
It's not that hard.
What date, do you know what date?
You just happen to?
Sound like shop
So it's so easy, anybody can do that.
The city has an IT guy.
What date is the October CVB meeting? I know, do we require,
It says 21st.
October
If
21st?
it's the third Monday, like.
That's my wedding anniversary.
My happy anniversary.
Thanks, Rose.
That'll be canceled.
Are we going to make any changes to the way that we currently, someone from the group requesting funding support has to be here for that meeting to answer questions? Is that gonna stay the same? What happens if someone is not available to be there on October 21st?
And how many, let's say, average, then 5 or 10, how many people do we get applications for in a typical year? Because now we're talking about front loading all that, so we're gonna have to do it basically all in one night.
It felt like we
Possibly.
did this last time.
It felt like that because it just happened that everyone like was
Yeah.
applying at once, yeah.
And we
Yeah,
pretty much
that's what
did
they do a
took care of a
little
lot of them,
presentation
over
and
half.
shuffle out.
And it was, honestly, I enjoyed that meeting because it was like, okay, we see where most of our
Right.
budget is going in one fell swoop, and that was nice, so.
Yeah.
And we
I thought
could,
it worked.
and we could always, we could structure that meeting a little bit differently than, or however we wanted to, really. Say we're planning on having, 12 applicants, that we're talking about that night. If we have those applications to you guys a certain amount of time in advance, you could actually the board could send me questions ahead of time, say, hey, I have 3 questions about so-and-so. We could try to get those questions to the applicants ahead of time, to where we could try to get things hammered out as much as possible before the meeting, so where it doesn't have to be a half-hour discussion with each
Right.
applicant.
They could just answer our questions.
Well, I mean, there you wouldn't have to vote at that meeting. Maybe you let them all present, and then at the November meeting, everybody's gotten a chance to talk and decide how you're gonna allocate the funds and vote when they're not here, and then award all that.
Yeah, that's true.
I like that.
So I think a meeting for presentations, then they come back the next.
Meeting to vote, yeah.
As
Plus, it
long
also
as
gives you
they're-
time to digest everything
As
too.
long as they're,
Yeah.
it's not before November, that works.
If what's not, I'm sorry.
Before the November meeting.
Which is the 18th of November.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, I guess, yeah.
So if their event fell between, we'd need to,
Oh, I
Do
see,
it then.
right, yes. Well, as far as I know, right now, there's not any, because it, right, like,
we can get new though.
yeah,
Maybe some-
yeah.
Well, maybe for next year, yeah, move it up. I mean, I don't know. I just think having people present and everybody on the board can email if they've got questions each other, and then
But that leaves them
bring it
for a
all to a
month
vote.
waiting.
What's
Are we
that?
getting, that leaves them for a month wondering, do they get the?
Well, also, we don't technically have to, we could, meet for the 21st, have everybody give a presentation, then we could actually, 2 weeks later, we could have have a special
Yeah.
meeting and not,
Doesn't have to be a
and
month,
vote,
yeah.
and then not even have our regular meeting for November.
I was thinking of calling it a workshop. Because, we'd have all the things out and you all could come with your questions and figure out if all the applications were complete with all your questions
No.
and have time to contact them if there were questions.
All right.
We're gonna vote on it,
A lot to think about.
So we're really saying a deadline would be, well, we still have to have it before, or do we? Before the presentation on the 21st.
Yes.
We still want them to do it at least 2 weeks ahead of time.
Do we have time to contact all these people and let them know that?
And by we mean you.
That's what I asked.
That's just phone calls.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
I mean, if you guys feel confident that you can do everything that you have to do on your end, because that's the brunt of the work, like I'm confident that we can make this method work better for everyone. Any more questions before we move forward with this?
Jeff, any thoughts?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so how do we wanna frame this, call for a motion? Are we framing it
What about?
to change it to a deadline of blank and then a meeting on the 21st and then a voting meeting 2 weeks later, or how are we gonna do this?
What about an application deadline of 2 weeks before the October meeting, which is October 7th?
Okay,
I'm just talking. So.
yes, well, I'm writing down what you're saying, so go
Okay.
ahead.
So that could be the application deadline. And the 21st could be the meeting where presentations are made.
Okay,
And what if there was because the 18th gets too close to Thanksgiving and everybody, it's all squirrely with holidays and stuff.
Thanksgiving's the
what's
next
2
week on
weeks
the
after the
28th.
21st, what's that?
Yeah.
What is 2 weeks after the
The
21st?
4th of November.
November 4th.
We have a special meeting November 4th to actually vote.
I think that sounds like an even better, because like you said, normally the November CVB meeting might not even have a quorum, there might be
Yeah.
other issues, blah, blah, blah. I like the idea of just doing a 2-week special meeting,
And then not having a regular
correct?
November, whatever, 21st or whatever it would be.
Okay.
So that gives us 2 weeks to decide where to give it on.
Okay, so in regards to agenda item number 5, do we have a motion to approve changing our system? Does anyone else feel excited? Like, how many years has it been in this one way? To change the application due date process to October 7th, applications due October 21st, presentation and discussion meeting, and then special meeting to vote on November 4th. Do we have a motion to approve those changes?
I'll make it.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Rebecca really wanted to.
Well, I like being able to see the whole picture
Right.
before we choose where to put the money.
What are we gonna do the rest of the year?
That's a good point.
I think it's a party at Justin's.
Well-
Turn it into a talk show.
That's a fantastic question, and something that, since I've had this job, so much of the meeting times every month have been allocated to, discussing like this application one, and so it'd be great to be able to get your all's feedback and ideas on other things. So instead of just relying on you guys just to recommend, funding for events, I would like to have you guys helping with just offering your creativity and ideas for other things, where we make use of your time and your abilities and your brain power.
Sounds good to me. All right, so we had no one was opposed, anyone abstain? All right, moving forward, agenda item number 6, budget update.
Basically, I was just going to talk to you about what I already talked about in terms of next year's budget and those decreases. So that's pretty much what I was going to say.
Can you explain the why behind that? I mean, is there-
30%
is that a
across the board?
Yes,
decrease in
absolutely. That's a great question.
Hotel and tax?
Yes, so the hotel motel tax is what funds the CDB or the tourism department, whatever you want to call it. So if somebody says tourism department and somebody says CDB, those are the exact same things. It's just some people call it different stuff. By like the actual like city ordinance calls it a convention and visitors bureau.
What percentage of the hotel motel tax funds CVB?
60%.
Yeah, 2/3 goes to tourism, 1/3 goes to parks.
60, yeah, so 66-33.
If you have any questions about the parks portion, don't ask me. Because I've got this breakdown.
So 30% across the board is what's being projected. 30% cut in the budget.
I'd have to look to do the math and tell you for sure.
Are we just not having enough tourism this year?
It's
Oil fell out.
basically back to, it's pretty comparable, whether it's hotel motel revenue or sales tax revenue. They're both kind of on the same like little ride, that the projection for this year is pretty similar to 2 years ago. The past year was, with sales tax and with hotel and motel revenue, was, you know, kind of like the best year that the city had ever seen. So now it's kind of come back down to what's probably more, you know, reasonable.
When does Mumford and Sons come again?
And even with that gigantic event, I think that the sales tax surplus from like that event for like the kind of like the capturing period of like a few months, where they kind of figured out, you know, how much revenue was increased by that event. I think like the difference was maybe like $200,000 or $300,000.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, so even a bit like that wouldn't put a dent in, you know, the fluctuation from like last year to this year.
Mainly because they were all camped out down there, over
Oh, they didn't stay in
70% of them.
hotels.
Yeah.
So we don't charge them for camping at the flats and tax. so
Why not?
we should.
Plus, it's just a couple of nights, even if every hotel room in town is full for 3 nights, it's still extrapolated over the whole year.
But it's not. I can tell you that. It's not, and it hasn't been for the last 2 years.
So we need more long-term events.
We need, there's.
Someone had to pop the tires on the highway to get them to stop.
Anything
Yeah.
else budget update wise? All right. Board comments?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, I missed one. Staff comments
Sorry.
first. Sorry.
Berlin, do you want to go first?
I asked you earlier, we didn't.
You don't have to see. You don't have to make a comment, Berlin. It's up to you. I'm not forcing you to talk.
Well, I met some nice people that came for the car show Saturday, and one man is very involved in American Disabled Veterans Group, and they meet several times a year for different types of meetings. And so he started talking to me about getting those folks to come here next year. So it possibly would be an October thing. The idea, you know, we don't have a casino, we don't have a big hotel where everything is in the same place, but I'd love for ideas of how we can work it out. So his 150 to 200 people would choose Guthrie to come to for their convention. They have a big convention, they have smaller ones, and so, you know, I'll get more information from him. So, and that they are, a lot of them are disabled for different reasons, but, so it has to be good, handicap accessible. So anyway, it was just a good positive discussion with him, that they would love to see what we can offer for their group.
Do you remember which specific veterans group that was? Like, was it Wounded Warriors, was it?
Folds of
I
Freedom.
thought he said
Folds of
American
Honor.
Disabled Veterans, but
Okay.
DAV.
he gave me a card, but it was his car. It was about
Right,
it
that
was
is-
his cool car is what it was about. But I'll get that all
Sure thing.
information,
Thanks,
especially
Carla.
if we're gonna have more brainstorming ideas. That'd be great to talk about how they can have their meetings here, eat here, stay here, and all be kind of everything Guthrie, and why they should come here.
Okay.
Shop, play, eat, stay.
Yes,
You okay?
yes.
Yeah.
I think the meeting accommodations is probably like the biggest hurdle sometimes. Like once you get over a certain number of folks there aren't a whole lot of options where you can fit, 300 people in a room.
Do any of our bigger hotels have convention rooms?
They have meeting rooms, but they're not that large. I've looked at a couple of them. And I talked to him about the American Legion, as far as that's a pretty big room.
Yeah.
But then and then they usually have their wives with them that are out shopping, is like
Right.
he said,
Right.
is I'm quoting him.
Sure.
They're not in the meetings, but
Did he
they're.
happen to say how many people come to their convention?
The
But sit in,
yeah.
like, whatever room size is needed, like, what's the size needed?
I think he settled at 150.
Okay, well then, like, the depot, or, like, we've got, yeah,
The
okay.
fairgrounds, that center building, I forget what they call it, it got redone completely too, the kitchen and everything, so
Mhm.
it'll hold
It's
300 people.
more, it's gonna just, disabled veterans, just it'll be, we need to find out how much we can actually support that, because if you've got, if they're bringing 75 guys in wheelchairs, do we have 75 wheelchair accessible rooms to get? That's what I'm saying, as far as the full 80, if we're going to go out, we need to make sure that we can support the full ADA compliance that they're going to need,
Right.
knowing what they're, so that would be a definite.
Because we can, I can definitely sell them on the idea of come to Guthrie, it'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
different than being in a casino
Oh,
or
sure.
a hotel that has everything in
Yeah.
one
Yeah, have
place.
some money
It'll be
left.
different, but we will be accommodating.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's great, we will be accommodating, just gotta make sure that they require above and beyond, that's all I'm saying.
And just
Make
so
sure
you know,
we
they'll be
don't-
looking at other places too, so ideas will be great.
Yeah,
Got it.
thanks, Marla.
Excellent.
Other staff comments?
Is that all? Yeah.
I believe I'm finished, thank you.
The only thing I was going to share was that we're coming down to the end of this budget year, and something that we tried to do this year was really kind of up our game in terms of like the content that we push out there for that we promote, and also that we kind of give to our Guthrie residents to help us promote things. And so I was going to review a little bit some of the stuff that we've worked on this year, just to kind of establish. We've had, let's see, we've got about 23, 24 different episodes of a podcast that are up, and each one of these we tried to have a guest that is somewhat tourist related, whether it's talking with Byron Berline or Glenda at the glass shop or whoever it might be. And so these episodes are super casual. It's usually like 45 minutes of
Hit the brakes.
like me and Chris talking with someone about like their shop or whatever it might be. And so
I'm Chris Evans. We are
like all of those episodes, we push them out both audio and video, and so someone can subscribe to those on, if they listen to podcast on Spotify or Overcast or whatever it is, you can subscribe to the audio with that. We also push them out via our social pages and our YouTube page. And what I've been trying to do with not just the podcast, but also things like whatever videos that we have, I'm trying to connect everything together. So if we push out a podcast this week, then I try to go back later and add to like our blog. I'll come back in and make a blog post that includes like, here's that, in case you missed that podcast, here it is, plus some other information about, whether it's like Byron's shows, plus here's another video we did with Byron. So it kind of has like, an expanded look into whatever we focused on. And then we can push that blog post out again. So we're trying to utilize like individual pieces of content more than just one time. So we don't go through all the trouble to have a podcast and then we've posted it and then it's done.
Right.
So we're trying to make content last longer and being able to utilize it more and more times. The the blog has been able to help
Well,
us.
this new album is, it's been a while since we came out with one. It was about
Since I hit play on that, I'll go with this topic. So another thing we've been able to push out there is we've worked with Hoboken to have like a little music video series, the Tiny Town Concert series, and so with that partnership, like Hoboken's been able, Trey has taken care of the funding side of that, to where the shooting and editing of it, he takes care of that. I help with just booking the artists for it. And then KOSU, the radio station, has helped with promotion of the videos. And so now those videos have reached enough of an audience and had enough views where KOSU can look for underwriters to help fund the filming, editing of it. So that's been kind of a nice partnership. And so I can use those, let's see, I can use those videos as like a single piece of content where we post a video on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And like I said before, we can go back and do it again with our blog or other things, and it's all connected together. We can keep using it. A nice thing about this video series is it's expanded enough now. We're getting we started with like local artists, then it kind of expanded to like Oklahoma based artists in general, and now we've started to have like touring musicians who are coming through and want to be part of that series, which is great in terms of the artists themselves promote these pieces.
Yeah.
So if someone in October we're filming a video with a band from Brooklyn, so they'll be promoting that video with their fan bases, wherever they might be across the country, and that gives us another that collaboration helps us reach farther than we would reach on our own.
Right.
So,
I love that you guys are doing it that way, that you're supporting local artists, but then you're supporting Guthrie tourism by reaching people who might not ever know about us except for that band from Brooklyn. So that's really cool.
Yeah. It's nice that all the different pieces of that puzzle are reaching different people.
Yeah.
And so all of us working on it together, that reach is a lot better than we could just do on our own. One other little thing that I was going to share, a few months ago, whenever I say a few, it probably means 8 years ago. But if you remember that we had one meeting where we brainstormed the ideas for the Guthrie weekend or the Guthrie getaway kind of idea for videos. And so we were able to take all of your all's ideas for that, and we've started pushing those videos out into a place to stay, a place to eat, something to do. And so that's like your Guthrie getaway, trying to give people ideas for how to spend time in Guthrie for a couple of days and to spend the night. And so I'll just show one example of this, and I'll be done. So these are I'll stop it before we all listen to Lizzo's Tiny Desk concert or something. So with those pieces, at the end of the next 5 or 6 months, we'll have all those videos that we can use more than just one time. We can use for a lot of different purposes, but we'll also have different segments that we can mix and match things depending on what who we're trying to reach. We can also use those mainly in the future if we're going to target, with paid social media stuff. If we want to target, a certain demographic of Wichita residents, we can push out a certain combination of those pieces to folks in Wichita. The next month we could look at if we wanted to do Stillwater or Dallas or Oklahoma City or Tulsa. And so this just gives us something that is a really good, quick video. We're not expecting people to watch a documentary.
Right.
And so, yeah. So, but I like that you guys were able to come up with so many different ideas that one night. We've got this bank of things now that we're just kind of trying to plug in over the next few months to get these pieces done. So we've got 3 of them, and we'll be posting the 4th one this week sometime.
And this would happen to be, you could do all that at one place, but they've actually hopped around as far as you can stay here, you can do this, and you can eat there, so you know, it could be a variety. It is a variety on this other one.
I see.
So there's ages, there's gender, and they go to the
Yeah, so like some of them, like with the Dominion House, since they have like the different things there, it was simple for us to just like video this, video that, okay, we're done. But most of the time it'll be like, you know, taking separate things and combining them together.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I wasn't correcting, but just, you know, like the variety,
Thanks, Mom.
which we, no, don't you dare. So,
Shots fired.
there's so much to do again, we can put a bunch of those together
Yes.
with here, hither, and yon. It's awesome.
Did Aaron put those together, Aaron Ryland?
Yes. Aaron is the
Excellent.
genius.
Thank you, Aaron. I know you're
Yes.
listening.
Good job, Aaron. Yeah, especially like with the different like animated pieces that this video is using. We hadn't done that before with other stuff, so Aaron did a fantastic job figuring out how to fly things in and make them do cool things.
Very cool. Any other staff comments? All right, board comments.
Just had a question, was an answer gotten to the Airbnb taxing situation that was discussed at the last meeting?
That's it.
I don't believe it was ever, I mean,
No,
Yeah, that's a city council.
yeah.
it's kind of out of our hands.
Yeah.
So present the idea to city council,
What's that?
present it to city council.
Well, there's a lot of stuff. I think it's like finding out how to be put on the agenda and then speaking with your ward representative. And then there are other steps in place, but I would also like to see an official answer for that
They have one
question.
for Oklahoma. I mean, they do pay a tax.
The
and it
state of
is-
Oklahoma charges
Right, and
Airbnb.
then I want to say Oklahoma City and Tulsa also have special agreements with whatever their things are, but it's not the full tax burden because hotels and B&Bs operate at a 13% tax burden, right? And so that's not the full amount that Airbnb puts as far as what they pay, as far as what they do there. I don't know, it's like 5-6%, something along those lines. But it's not the full amount. So there is a discrepancy between what they actually charge, or what they said they charge on their website, and what they fold into the cost of their pricing, versus what somebody here in Guthrie actually has to. So there is a discrepancy there. So for people booking on Airbnb, they, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm no city lawyer, there's a discrepancy in the tax income. If somebody books on Airbnb, I do not believe they're paying the full tax burden that Guthrie has. You see, does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, they
You're
get like
paying the
half,
tax,
they're
but
getting a
they're not
break.
necessarily paying it to the city.
Right. And it's not the full amount either. Because like I said, we have 13%, and I think they're only paying like 5 or 6, or it's on their website or something like that. I don't know. I mean, they have different agreements in different cities in Oklahoma, so
Yeah.
good question. But
I definitely think that's above our pay grade, but I
the
would love
extent
to
of our
have,
knowledge.
I'd love to hear an answer from someone
Well,
who.
considering
yeah.
most B&Bs are Airbnbs now, it's a significant portion of tax revenue that's being lost.
Any other board comments this evening? What time is it? Ooh, 6:44. Mike Monahan, if you're watching.
She's almost got it. So what did we decide on, or y'all decide on?
Oh, it was
Usually
approved by the board, and I'll take it to
Take it
leave it
apart,
tomorrow.
somebody says, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. Okay, with the fairgrounds being county, and we need more events to bring more people into this area, right? why, I mean, is there a problem with us helping them, not monetarily, but like videos or something? People, let people know that the facilities are there, especially now that they don't look trashy.
Truly told.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, I was just wondering that. And
How do we advertise our for rent spaces?
Yeah, like
For rent.
venues or,
Like the fairgrounds, right? Anybody can rent it, right?
right?
Anybody
right.
can use it. So like more other larger public spaces that any event can come in, like do we have a marketing program for that, like that goes out?
We don't typically like, have anything kind of like promotion or advertising about like event space.
It might help
Just
draw
curious.
some things in here.
Just curious.
That's actually a really good idea. Because if we promote places to host large events,
Especially the flats.
it might,
It'd be good to figure out how to really target that to people who might be interested, because like, the percentage of people who are event planners or whatever is pretty small compared to like the general public.
Sure.
So being able to find out how to like take, whatever that promotion is, take it to the event planners union or whatever.
Well, I was talking more
Whatever
about
that is, I like it.
to the public too, because
Oh,
how many
you're
times
taking
you
the word.
wanted to have a family reunion or anything like that, and you couldn't find a building. You got the park, and nobody knows there's that place down there with a full-blown commercial kitchen.
We do get quite a few, like, those, like, questions and requests that come through our office. And so, whether it's just like, phone calls to us, or that information's all on our website too. So, both of those things, like, our office is kind of like a repository of that information, but we haven't been proactive in terms of like, hello world,
Right.
distancing.
here's a place where you can, have whatever.
Coffee
Yeah.
shop.
That sounds good.
Any more board comments this evening? All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.